Well, today I'm with David Mosley, and if you look carefully, you'll also see Llyw Archen in the background. I'm with Bob Morgan and Keith Price. And David is our military expert. For today, we'll be talking about the campaign around the Battle of Badon and the marathon of the Saxons, as Keith calls it. And Llyw Archen was actually at the Battle of Badon. So over to you then, Keith. Over to you then, Keith.
Right, we'll go straight in and start. Do you want to start, Paul?
Yeah. So what have we got here then, Keith?
Right, this is the castle, Pencastle, which I've borrowed from a couple of castles on the internet. And if you look on the top, you can see the sea. That's the Bristol Channel there. So it's actually in this position on Pencastle. Right, carry on now. Right, this is the area that they actually landed on. They came, we think, watch it, we're not quite sure, came over and landed there. Now, the main reason I believe, and this is one of the reasons why that was picked, was that they were protected by the Neath River. So if anybody charged them, whatever, they still had to get over the Neath. When they got all their troops there, they then went up to a camp, Mynydd y Gair, which is, if you look on your side over there, I'll just move this over.
How many troops do you think landed there then, Keith?
Well, that's the question. In the records, King Arthur killed 692, I believe, in one charge. Oh, sorry, 962. So it's that was one charge. So that's a hell of a lot. Obviously, maybe there's a bit of exaggeration there, but generally, I should imagine it's closer to 100,000, because they fought 5 battles, and then the 5 battles with the last one, which would have, and that was over, I should imagine, a 5-week time. You know, it was timeline. But if you look here, you can actually see that's the cross there, and it's there. I'll just go on a bit. There's the camp. Mm-hmm. Now, all these maps are on, you can get them on the National Library of Scotland, OS maps. And you can move them around and everything. It's brilliant. Right, so that's the camp there. I'll go back. You can actually see the outlay of that there. Still there. Mm-hmm. Then they got on their feet, and they didn't ride, obviously, but there's a castle here, Mynydd y, which is overlooking Aberystwyth.
Port Talbot there, isn't it?
Yes. The M4 going up. So you can see it's right on top of the mountain there. We got some tumuluses there, so there might have been a battle or a skirmish of some sort. And then we move forward to Taibach, right? And as you can see, I'll move this over. You can see the outlay of the battlefield there. And if I go on, there's a cairn there. See that cairn? Now, if you look, that's the cross there of the cairn. Can you see the cross on the floor there?
Yes, yeah.
Totally amazing, isn't it? When you think of it. It's not a shadow or anything, that's a cross.
No, it's actually a cross, isn't it? Yes.
Amazing. And then they went to Margam Castle. This is, if you look here, you can see the camp. It's there, right? Which is at that point there, right there. And if you've been to Margam Castle, there's the pond, the big pond there. And on again.
Was that Morgan's Castle at Margam Castle that they're talking about now, do you think?
Yeah, that's Margam Castle, yes. Yes, it's
the castle's down there, but on the hill.
churchyard, and there's Margam Castle.
Because somebody's about to put out a film about Morgan's Castle at Margam.
Yeah,
it's not the same thing,
that's John and Rob, yeah.
Yeah, that's Rob and John.
Would it be that hill fort though that they?
I don't know where that is.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it is that hill fort, because neither of them had been there before, and they were planning a trip out there.
No,
I thought it was. That's why I mentioned it, because their video will tie in very nicely with this.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. They're very knowledgeable boys. They know more about this area than us, I should imagine. You know. Then we go on and we come up into the other camps. And if you look there it is there on the cross. And if you, I'll just go in, there it is there.
All right, okay.
Which you've got to admit is it's there, isn't it? In all its
same shape, yeah. And now you're calling camps. Are you saying that's where the Saxons camped?
It wouldn't. The British were on high ground. This is down the mountain.
Right. So every one of these camps you're pointing out, they're Saxon camps.
Until I tell you it's British camp.
All right. Okay. Spotted.
So yeah, this is a camp. If you can see the cross here, that is the
entrenchments.
Yeah, the entrenchments. You can see them. I've gone in, I think, a bit further. You can see them. See the
yeah.
And that's pretty good. And then we've got another camp. And I mean, it's still there. And then we'll go on. Oops. Now this is a British camp. It's up on top of the mountain. And it's an enormous camp. Look at it. It's absolutely enormous. I should imagine that Arthur chose the best camp. And the best place. And of course, this is visible up to the castle. Right? All this side now is visible from here. And then I've picked up a tumuli.
Tumuli is a burial mound, is it?
Yes, but if you look at it's something I should have mentioned actually before. If you look at this, the northerns and south and westerns are there. So that means you can pump these into your computer, onto a map on your mobile phone, and you can find these places easily.
Yeah, that's good work, Keith. That's really good work.
So all these locations will have a coordinates.
And we'll try to publish them in a list somewhere then.
Well, if they just make a note, no problem. Again, we got tumuli. I picked these up for them to know. Again, tumuli there. This is all on Badon. There's a British residence here just there.
So now we've reached Badon, have we?
Yeah, this is Badon. Yeah.
Yes.
What do you suppose the British residence
Yeah.
was then, Keith?
All year. Many Badons, many Badon.
Yeah.
On an earlier map, it's marked as a British, as a fortification, a British fortified residence, isn't it?
But it is I'll go back one. That's a British residence, right? But it's you're right. It's what's it called again?
British fortified residence on one of the maps,
British
with standing stones next to it as well. And then the next map, it's the site of standing stones. And then I think the next map, it's just stone. And then it's now today on current OS, it's not there at all. But they'll post in BHH specifically just on that one part of the map, how it's changed over the last 100 years.
John Pincher would know all this. His grandfather lived in this area on the mountain in one of the old houses, and he's got some good tales. Just go on. Oh, this is a private one. My daughter lives there, and there's the battlefield. It's absolutely amazing. She built a house next door to Badon. And then we come to Llangynoed. This is the village nearest to Badon, and I've been told that it's Llan, meaning the church of Gynoed, who was one of his mates who died in the battle. Just go on again, and then we come to, on the left-hand side, you can see Rhyw Tor Cymru. That's a lovely name for a battlefield, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's it there, in 1951. Took me years to tell everybody that.
Yeah. Took me years to learn how to pronounce it.
Yes. My State Golf Club there. And then you can see this dotted line? That dotted line is the British trackway. And I'll go on again. The British trackway has got a common name, and it's called Ela Moch, which is the Road of the Pigs. I surmised that it was called that because I thought it was I still think that the entrenchments were enriched by the pigs, right? I believe that it housed the pigs, so that whatever the weather was, it was muddy, right? Because if you're going to fight in good land, or nothing is it, but if you're fighting in terrible conditions, you know, it is. So that's one of the reasons. But then to be fair, someone said to me, I think it was John, I'm not quite sure, that the banners that the Saxons had in front of their army was the boar's head. Am I right in that, thinking that? And which means this proves something beyond any doubt, that this was the route of the Saxon army. In other words, it was called Ela Moch because of that. This takes us then to the castle. You've seen the castle there, that on the start, that's where it was positioned. This is, you can see the trackway coming up, and then it goes forward, and see that going down towards Cummer, and that is the British trackway, Ela Moch. See a 2 minutes there?
Does the trackway stop at Cummer, or does it go further?
Yes, no, it stops at Cummer.
Right.
I'm assuming there must have been a reason why it stopped.
Mm.
So, or why it was built. The roadway is recorded as being 4,000 years old. And that starts in Swansea and goes all the way up to Pencastle. So if there was no castle there wouldn't be no road. There's no other reason for it. So that castle was Pencastle, the head castle. So there's a reason for it. Just logical. I'll go on now. That there is the tumulus. That is known as the Glyncama Cairn. It was on a schedule monument. It's no longer a schedule monument. It's disappeared out of all the records because this is now being developed as all this area is being developed as a resort. It's the I can't remember what it's called, but it's the adventure park. Wild Rose, can't remember. Anyway, forward. This goes on then over the mountain, over Glencorrog, and over the mountain to Erwine. And you can see site of battle there. One thing I ought to make you aware of is these battlefields were used more than once.
They were what, Keith? I missed that.
Well, they were used more than once.
Oh, more than once, sorry. Yeah.
They strategically positioned, and you don't go, if a battlefield is used once and it was good, you use it again, wouldn't you?
If you won there, yeah.
Logic. And then you've got tumuli in the area. You can see that. And then I went down to, again, there's more tumuli there. And again, all on the coordinates. And I went down the Cannon Valley, started going down, again, picking up all the tumuli. There it is there. And this takes us down to certain things that are in the Cannon Valley I've picked up so that the coordinates got them. This is actually in Trewbert, but I thought it's called Castle Nose. I don't know if it's directly involved, but I put it down. And this takes us then down into the Cannon Valley. I'm following the tumuli all the way along, you can see. And then this takes us, again, following the tumuli.
This is Eglwyswing, wasn't it?
And this takes us then to a place called Rhywsaesn, which is there. And this was the battle scene where all the rest of the kings of Britain met with Arthur to kill and murder and destroy the Saxon army, who were buried in Beddau, which I believe is the graves.
Mm.
Yeah, Ross thought it might be our graves. Instead of it just being plural, the AU at the end could be our.
Well, maybe they buried all of them then.
Maybe. But if we find another burial, the other side, their graves.
The point is that I've recently discovered that the tumuli could hold up to 1,000.
Mm.
which is ridiculous. But then if you pile them all high, you know, and burn them, that's what you're going to get. And then I've taken that, Bob, which you may be more interested in, is that the Britain Ferry, he came through, look, all the way along there. You're in Margam then, Castle. You come up, that's the Bottle of Badon. There you got your Nantyfallon, Tor Cymru. There's the castle in Pencastle. This takes you up the mountain, over Glencorrog to Irvine, and then down the Aberdare, Mountain-Ash, Pontypridd, Llantrisant. That's 50 miles, and it's not easy. It rises from sea level. It rises up to 900,000 feet above sea level, well over 1,000 feet. In this area, you've got the zip wire, which has just been constructed. So, you know, what I was hoping to do is to let people know that if they wanted something to do, they could walk. As long as you get permission to get into these places, you know, you can't walk into a field with cows, for example. But, you know, some of it is free, all over the Glencorrog, all the way up. And down into the valley and down to Llantrisant. And there you are.
And if you superimpose the Rhondda Cynon Taf map of monuments, which you can find on their website, the amount of tumuli, etc., burial grounds up by Hirwaun, you can hardly put a mark between them. There's loads of them up there.
Well, I think what you've got to understand is that if you got an army, because this was for one purpose and one purpose only, in my opinion, is that they wanted a base, a location they could survive in. And that castle, Pencastle, was the obvious, you know, if you think of it, of the whole area there. Look, it's the only place, when you think of it. That's where they had to go. They can control the whole of that area from there. And so the idea was to get enough men, enough soldiers to get short distance. I think they wanted to go up this way, right? But I think for example, I know that there's a couple of knights killed in that area. There's one where the stone was laid, the Bodvik stone, which was his cousin from Brittany, fought in the battle. That's now in Margam, in the Stone Museum. So I should imagine that they would have made, when you think of it, if they stood on top of that mountain throwing stones down, no one's going to go up there. I mean, that's, you know, it's 1,000 feet, you know. And so they wanted them to come this way because this was the only way. It's virtually, it's flatter than anywhere else. And once they get onto that area here, it's a plateau. The whole thing runs virtually level on top of the mountains, all the way up to Irvine. So this was planned. This was planned. It was a trap, a booby trap, because when they actually fought the battle, 3-day battle, hell of a battle. I mean, it saved Britain. And they fought that battle, and they then got up to Cummer.
So you're saying they didn't defeat the Saxons at Badon?
Oh, no.
They just weakened each other.
I always thought they did, but they didn't. Right? Because why are they going up here? I only followed the tumuli, you know, it's there. There was battles there. So this actually takes you up. Now remember that he burnt everything. He burnt all the mountains. I mean, we've seen forestry fires and in this hell. Well, this was what it was.
So the British burned all the mountains, you're saying?
He burnt everything. Everything.
British.
There wasn't any food. There was nothing. They poisoned all the water. They just put the dead in there, you know. There was no water. There was nothing. When they got to Pencastle, it was demolished. This was built with a plan. The plan was always that you could see, you can see from that castle all the way down to there. All the way. So you've got a castle where you can view 1, 2, 3, no, 3 battlefields. And you know, there is a motorway, an ancient motorway, the British trackway, which runs all the way down here. And even joins in with Taibach.
It goes Taibach in it, yeah.
I mean, you couldn't write this, could you? Couldn't. I mean, why would they build? Why would they build a roadway along this? There's a purpose for it. A purpose. It was always there. It was always there, and he knew that if he could draw him up to Cama, up there, then they would have no alternative. If he left the castle up, they'd have been there. We've been speaking to women now. No doubt. So what he did was he demolished it. It was demolished. They tumbled it down the mountain.
When do you think that castle was built, Keith?
I'm changing my mind on this regular, only because of information I'm receiving. I know that the bridge trackway is recorded from Swansea in this area here as being 4,000.
Yeah. 4,000 years old.
You know, I think they're shy on that. I would say in excess of 5. That's what I'd say. And I'm one day going to prove it.
So that castle is well old, much earlier than anything over by Cwmbran or Caerwen.
It's the first castle in Britain. There was no other castle. That's the first building built. Sorry, in my state, in Avon. And it's easy to find out. So all we got to do is, get the excavations done and check. But it will never be checked. I mean, this is now full ahead. They're demolishing everything there
Aren't they doing any archaeological excavations as part of the planning consent for it?
Well, it was originally in the planning, but it's been rescinded, I believe.
Right.
Except for Bridge and the Glyn Camacan. The Glyn Camacan, I believe, maybe in excess of 20,000 years old. And I'm working on that at the moment. I can't tell you anymore. It's being revealed steadily to me. Not. I'm looking at things and finding a lot of things. There's going to be. I'm in the middle of a book. Maybe just starting it actually, but it's coming together, and it's gonna alter how British history is taught. No doubt.
So from a military point of view then, Dave, have you got any observations on that route?
I'll be a bit worried about connecting all the tumuli with burials after battles, because tumuli have been used for single people right back to the Neolithic, I think. That's the one thing I'd be worried about there. Strategically, it's not far away from what I was thinking. I thought they might have gone up the Llanfi Valley towards Maesteg, where the actual battlefield is, Maes Cadwa, where that fortified residence is.
Yes.
And also just need to speak to John more as well about the sequence of Saxon locations towards Badon. And I'm used to, in my head, thinking that Badon was a deciding battle. But that's just my opinion, and I think Keith's theory is good. It holds water,
Yeah.
but without really knowing the ground and looking at the route with the tumuli on the ground, I wouldn't like to say yay or nay.
I think
I think the bit past Port Talbot, that might have been like a feint, or if our armies were coming from like the Cardiff area, as it is in Rhonabwy, they might have been stopped and then turned to go over the up the valleys towards the back of Badon, where the three burial mounds are that are definitely associated with Badon, with that battle, like Loachen. It's definitely not an up and down route, is it, Keith? Having not actually followed it, or is it? It's generally all high ground, all plateau.
Yeah.
Well, basically, you're on sea level in Britain Ferry.
I know that bit. I mean, more around Affon Forest Park from Maesteg to Hwan.
Yeah, well, it's up Badon Hill.
Yeah,
it's an easy walk. I
Yeah.
walk from
You're onto basically a ridge line at that point.
It's easy, you know. It's not an hard walk. The hard walk, or the right. What happened was, when that castle was demolished, and they couldn't see the castle, right, because they had to get there. And once they walked in there and found it demolished, they had no alternative then but to follow him, Arthur, up the valleys. Otherwise, they'd have to go all the way back. And they weren't there to come back. This was a major invasion. This wasn't a battle, or we'll have a battle and that's it. No, this was an invasion. This was taking over this country. Remember now that he fought them and beat them everywhere, right? And this was about, they've been trying it for hundreds of years, trying to get us. And this was the Vandals and the Saxons plan when they were in Mercia, and they decided that this was a wealthy area. This was where everything was, and they came in to get it. And when you think of it, if they had that castle there, they'd survived. But when it went up there, they were demolished. Now, that's a hell of a thing to say, demolishing a big castle. But it was planned, it was always in the planning. And I think we've got to say that this route was definitely taken because of the Helamoch, with the where the banners, when they massed, they had the banners of the pig, the boar, and it's definite. It's what the people saw.
Why didn't they ever rebuild the Pencastle, Keith?
Sorry?
Why didn't they ever rebuild Pencastle?
He's done his job.
And they didn't need it any longer. They were over the other side by Killian at that point, weren't they?
I think something came along and stopped everything.
Oh yeah, I got you.
And it came out of the sky, didn't it?
The comet, yeah. But
Yeah,
News on that as well.
I like that idea, Keith. I like that.
Well, it's when they got, well, this area here going over Glencorrog is like no land you've seen, right? And it was hard. That was the hardest part. Now, what you got to remember is they carrying all their swords, they carrying all their weapons, they carrying everything, all their food, all their tents, everything with them, right? And wow, that's enormous. I mean, I say it's about 5 weeks. I mean, I can't, just think of it. If you had to get an army from Britain Ferry, that you lodge up here for a little while until you're ready, till everybody's there, and then you carry along, and then you fight a battle there. Oh, that's going to stop you for a little while. You've got to kill, bury all your dead and everything, and then this, and then this, and that, and that. But it's got to be 5 weeks, I reckon. Just, I'm just thinking as an ordinary person. I expect, David, you may know more about it, but
3 miles an hour for a laden army.
50 miles.
and how many hours a day could they march, Dave?
Yeah, this is not just on the level, though, is it, David? It's
No.
This was
That's all the deciding factors. I completely agree with them landing there. Initially, I thought they might have mistook one river inlet for another, and that's why they landed further west than you'd expect.
You thought they'd have landed nearer to Pyle or something.
Yeah, but that's an open flank then to the east.
They were not protected.
David, can I show some of my slides now, because
Yeah, great.
I've got some views similar to yours about as to where they landed and why they landed, etc. And if we can go through that, we can perhaps then come to some kind of a conclusion about that, or some consensus view about it.
Excellent.
Okay. So if you're coming back to the reason why did they come by boat, I think the simple answer is you just look at the map. And if they were coming from England, coming back on land, they would be coming from Gloucester. They go across the Severn, and then they go across the Wye, the Usk, the Ebble, the Taff, the Ely. In order to get into the Vale of Glamorgan, they would have to come across those, and then every one of those rivers, none of them are easy. Some of them aren't fordable or readily fordable, and if they were defended at each river point, it would take them a long time to make their way across. And also, you then got this really long extended supply line, and as you know, so the army marches on its stomach and all of that. They would still need resources. They would still need replacement men. They would still need food and other provisions and ammunition, etc., all coming along. And it would be a very long, extended supply line. But I think the main reason is it depends where they were trying to get to. And in my mind, if you're the Saxons, it's like the Romans and the Normans, what you're after in Wales, you're not after the hills because there's nothing there. You're after basically the Vale of Glamorgan, which is where Arthur's kingdom really was basically based. You've got all of the written accounts, or basically say Killian was one of his big bases. We've got Carmelin, which is up by Cardiff, and then you've got all of the Glamorgan sites. And the issue with it is, in terms of then coming across from the sea, the whole of that Glamorgan coastline has got coastal forts all around it as part of the, Wilson and Blackett have sort of highlighted all of those forts. So if you're coming from land, I think you're onto a no-hoper, because at every river crossing, if they're defended, you stand the chance of being pushed back or not making any further progress. And I actually think that the whole of this thing, the Saxons wanted, what they didn't want was the hills and the mountains. They wanted where all the wealth was at that moment in time and where all the action was, and it was the coast and the Vale of Glamorgan. And so I think that the reason why they came then there was that they came round on a sea route as a means of like I say, getting a large amount of men there quickly without having to cross all the rivers and having a long extended supply route as they fought their way from river to river to river. And it's coming back down to, again, if you look at the topography, when they come in for a landing, there's 3 potential landing sites that they're coming in for here. And the reason I think they've chosen Crumlin Barrows is because it gives them the protection of the River Neath.
Yeah. So
when they land there, they've got this river. Now this section of the river here, even today, is quite notoriously bad, dangerous. So they got protection from that. Once they come ashore here, at Pencastle, there's two places named Pencastle by here. If you get into each of these Pencastle places, what it does is it stops you being viewed from anywhere across here. You're hidden behind this bit of a hill here, and the other Pencastle is up in here. And again, you're held, screened by things, so you can land and get all your men and troops hidden from view. And then you obviously got to make your way up to the River Neath to get to a crossing point, which according to Wilson and Blackett, let me go back again. According to Wilson and Blackett, was around about where Neath is today, because they came across via Pencastle. It is one of the places which is further north than where Keith was indicated.
Yeah, there's I think there might be battles there even, yeah.
So, but if you look at the alternative land, and this is the point that you were making, David, is if you look at Aberarron Burrows, if I can find my this one here, we've looked at this one. If you remember when we went up on top of Mynyddinas, you've got the River Neath here, you've got the River Afton here, and then you're on the beach. Oh, this is so annoying. You're on the beach. And then you've got this almost insuperable steep hill up to the top of Mynyddinas. You paint yourself into a corner if you land there, because all Arthur's got to do is put men along the River Afton, and you can't go anywhere. Stick men on top of Mynyddinas. You can't get up that slope because it's almost unassailable. You wouldn't be able to get up to the top there. Your only option at that point would be to retreat. The real landing point would be, as you said, it would be Markham Sands. You've got 7.8 kilometers there of sands where you can land boats. And once you land there, you're then right onto the plain. And if you've got a big force, you just go straight across the plain. And what you do is you force Arthur and all his men up into the hills. That's where if that's in that scenario, the Battle of Badon then would be taking place with Arthur's men ensconced on top of Mynyddinas with all the Saxons coming up from the coastal plain. Now, I don't believe that that happened, because if you look at the detail of the topography of Mynyddinas itself, I don't believe that happened. But the other thing we got to look at then, once you start doing this, is that there's 2 things you got to look at. One is then the battle styles of them. The Saxons were they were huge users of the shield wall. They would have shield walls and men arranged in formation, which is great for defence. But they could also use it in offence. Whereas the Welsh were more using like guerrilla tactics. And since the Roman times, in Roman times they were using chariots, as it's documented, but the Britons were using chariots. By Arthur's time, they were principally relying on horses, cavalry, and they were using guerrilla tactics and hit and run. And they were more, in a sense, more defense orientated, I think, rather than defense orientated. Because if anyone came in, as documented again, when the Vikings and people like that arrived, they burn the plain so that there's no food, and then they'd all retreat up into the hills. And that at that point there, what I can believe then is probably that Cairo up here becomes a central rallying point for all of the forces. You know, if someone comes in and you're forced out of the plain up into the hills, that makes a great base then for you up in there, because it's quite far into the hills, and it's quite well protected, because there's a lot of hill forts between there and you, and the Saxons or whoever's coming down on the plain. And then you'd have a series of attacks coming down from the valleys, trying to get the plain back. Now, the other thing we've got to look at is, right, okay, Crumlin Burrows, that's 1.8 kilometers of sand there. How many people can you actually land on there? How many boats? Now, in Saxon times, if you're looking, for example, look at the Sutton Hoo ship. You know, that's about sort of 30 meters by about 5 meters wide. Most of the ships of the Saxon period were not much wider than 5 meters. So if you're going to land boats up on them and bring them up onto the sand, you'll need a 5 meters linear length of beach for the boat, and then you probably need another 5 meters either side of it in order to unload the men, etc. So you start pulling boats up onto the beach. If you say that you need 10 meters for each boat, 5 meters for the boat itself, and 5 meters for unloading, you're only going to get maximum of 180 ships up onto Crumlin Burrows. Now, each ship at that time, if they could hold 100 men, they would be quite big ships. So you're talking of a maximum of 18,000 people being able to land in ships in, if you like, in one wave. Now, the only way you could land 100,000 there would be for those ships then to retreat and another batch of ships to come in, and you keep on doing that. You'd have to do it 5 times in order to get 100,000 people. Now, it's documented again that what was it? One of the in here. It took. I forget who he is now. Where did I get that Saxon in? Oh, yeah, Henry V. When he unloaded all his troops, he had 8,000 to 10,000 men at Harfleur, and it took them 5 days to unload the men. You know, it took them 5 days to do that. So if you're talking of each wave of ships taking at least 5 days or more to unload, and you're having to bring in 4 or 5 boats, you're talking 20. You're talking almost a month of boat activity. And I don't think that's what the Saxons were intending. I think that what the Saxons were intending was to a quick. I agree with Keith that this was a once and for all battle. They weren't going to come in here and they were going to take the South Wales away from Arthur. Full stop. This was going to be the maximum. Their maximum one opportunity in that generation to do it. So I think that they would go all out. One of the things I've considered is whether you land a small force of, you could probably get 15, 20,000 men pushing it. And their job was to come round and actually secure Markham Sands and hold some of Markham Sands and then protecting the bigger fleet coming in, which would then, instead of going up into the hills, as Keith is saying, would then just go straight through the plain and push all of the Welsh back up into the hills. Now that seems to me to make more sense than actually the Saxons heading for Cairo as a target.
So basically, you're having a force that creates a beachhead. Yes. Albeit in Britain Ferry, let's say 20,000.
Yep.
They come along then Aberafan, and they secure the Morfa beach.
Yep. they were secure Margam Sands and this beach down here, and their job would be to secure that and hold it until the main force landed.
That could be a very good explanation how you get a maximum of people onto that beach.
Yeah.
I mean,
What in that scenario, what I would suspect then happened was, and this is coming back then to your joining the dots. It was they got as far as Tyback,
yes,
and your Pandikar, and that they were to turn back that force which was coming around trying to secure Margam, then got stopped at that point. And then they got, and at that point, their only alternative was to head up then the British trackway, and that's when we start then linking your dots.
Yeah.
You know, so they were coming round in a sweeping movement here, but every time I move my cursor, they were coming up and they're coming round via Neath, and I've lost my cursor here, and Kevin Size. Then they were coming down, crossing over that and higher up, and then, as I said, coming down in a wheeling motion, then to get secure Margam Sands, and then couldn't get down onto that point, got turned back up, and then their only alternative was that's when the chase then starts up the British trackway.
To be fair, that sounds, you know, we are talking of a expedition course, army going in and preparing the landing place, very much.
And then the point was then as they hadn't secured the beachhead, the main force then wouldn't take off, because the thing about the Margam Sands beachhead then is you're not overlooked like Aberrawan Burrows by hills or a mountain behind you. You've got this fairly wide plain area, and there's no cover for you. There's no protection. So if you're landing on, you know, you will be landing. And by that time, Arthur's already worked out what you're up to, because he's seen you guys landing. He will already start having an army heading towards you. And you've got no cover on that beach. So you wouldn't dare risk landing your army, because you haven't got the protection. You know, the whole idea that I've got here is that you have this smaller landing force which would secure the beachhead and to hold it for a couple of days to enable them to get the main force on there. And it didn't happen because they got turned at Tyback, and then they got forced up the British trackway. And as you go, then you just then start joining the dots. You've got Pencastle, which is the one at Margam, and then you hit the fort. Then you hit the enclosure, then you hit the Bulwarker. And then at that point, then what I believe happened, I think you've got the other way around. You've got the Arthur being besieged at Bulwarker and the Saxons coming up and forcing him backwards. I believe it's the other way then, because I think that what happened then is we're coming back to the Wilson and Blackett version. Arthur then, knowing that the Saxons had landed over at Crumlin Burrows, he's made the call for all his men. He's assembled them at Ogmore, and then he marches them up the Fort Gurthright, up to Badon. And what's happened is the Saxons go as far as the Bulwarker, and there are troops, and Arthur's troops are holding that, and that is the siege which Arthur is coming to break. You know, the Bulwarker is holding out. It's when you look at it in detail as well, the Bulwarker it's lower than where the Saxons would be up on the ridge, so they're in a better position. But they were holding it out, and their job was to hold out long enough for Arthur's guys to get there. And Arthur then brings his guys up from Ogmore up the Fort Gurthright to actually get to Badon. Now, when you look at the topography of that, then the Saxons then are coming up here to the first fort, and when you start looking then at the existing, you've got all the existing entrenchments which are still there today. When you look at those, they're to the east of that British trackway. So whoever was in those forts is defending someone coming from the east, and they're behind the trackway is behind, and I think that's one of the important key things. The trackway is behind the entrenchments.
Yeah.
So to my mind, that means that that's the Saxons, because I'm convinced that Arthur is coming up from Ogmore. When you look at go down to then Mynydd Badon, Arthur's coming up the Ford Guthrath here, and the entrenchments here. This is Mynydd Badon. This is the high spot. You can see that the entrenchments are protecting that high spot of Mynydd Badon, both sides, and then they're extended. Now the entrenchments undoubtedly went a lot further, and there were more of them than we see today because they've been eroded out.
Yeah.
Once you start then going back to the written records that we've got. The written records are quite clear that Arthur hid some of it. You know, Arthur did set a trap, and one of the things in doing that and setting this trap was that he hid his men behind the hill, and he took them off at this point here. From here to the Bulwark, you can see one another,
Yeah.
albeit that you've got the valleys in between. But if Arthur put his men down here, some of his men down here, they can't be seen. They're hidden from the Saxons, who are up on this ridgeline up here. And they're also they put these. You got these entrenchments here. What I believe is, and again, it's in the written records. It was in, I think it's in not Gildas, it's in Geoffrey of Monmouth, which is one of the later ones. But what Geoffrey of Monmouth says is that the Saxons at the siege of Badon, they were not in a hill fort, but they were on the hillside because they were confident that their higher numbers that they had compared to what Arthur's men had, or what they could see Arthur had, they didn't need any further protection. So the night before the battle, they were just camped out on the ridgeline up here, which is why I believe that you have these entrenchments here. They're protecting the ridgeline here and protecting Arthur from coming further up the road. And these entrenchments here, I believe, would have gone all the way across the ridgeline at that point. And the Saxons were all out here. And at this point here, there were still Arthur's men still besieged in the bulwark and not giving out. And as soon as Arthur appears on here, the focus for the Saxons then is Arthur. And then ultimately what happens then is, so they meet down here then at Mascarplough, and you have the battle area down here. Here's where the fortified residence is, and to my mind, that explains the situation more, and it also explains what happens next, because Arthur, they meet and have the battle. Arthur's hidden. Oh, keeps on going. Arthur hid some of his troops around here, and I think that those troops came round from this side, coming up these slopes here, which is where the battle all took place around here. Some of his men were coming round the side of Mynydd Badon. The main advance was then up the ridge, where he was fighting his way up the ridge. And then what they did was they forced the Saxons back to this point here, where again they started then chasing them up the British trackway and following then your dot by dot up to Cairo.
Yeah.
So instead of you have Arthur being chased up the trackway, in my mind it's got to be the other way around. It's Arthur chasing the Saxons up the trackway to Cairo.
I think it's an excellent theory.
I know. Well, like I say, I've just put it out there as to. I mean, there's no real proof of that. But apart from, if you look at how these entrenchments are aligned, and this is where we need David's input. It's quite clear that there were two sides faced off one another here, one facing east and one facing west, basically. So it's a question of who was where, which side was, you know, on the east, which side was on the west. And in my view,
but we would be on the east, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
yeah, in my view, we've got to be on the
You're
east,
right.
which means that you know, the dream, you know, all the bits and pieces in the dream start to slot together. Then, because Arthur gets all these men, they come across the plain, they all congregate at Ockmore, they all march up the photograph right up to the Badon, where they're going to be there for the battle at 12 o'clock, and then they get to, and the siege then is, you know, Arthur relieves basically the small force that he's got at the Bulwarker. And those men then obviously then tie in with Arthur and start chasing the Saxons up to Cairo. Now, I think that that's a more, to my mind, it's more logical, but yeah, this is where David's military, you know, sort of skills will come to play.
I didn't, to be fair, that is a brilliant theory, and I think you're 90% right on it. You know,
Again,
I like your idea about the second lot coming over from the Somerset, or third or fourth, who knows? And it then they all landed up in Margam, ready for the battle.
And again, you know, when you look at it, you know, the Saxon landing site here, you can see one of the Panty sites is marked on the map there. There's two actually on the larger scale maps, and I put them there, and you can see what I say here. When you look at these locations, look, Arthur and his guys now looking across the river Neath. These guys are the other side of this little hill.
That's right.
So that what you can't see what they're doing. You can't see how many numbers. You can't, you know, how many precise numbers and things like that. And this other Panty sites, then there's two of them in the same location. You're in this little valley here. Again, you're putting all your men in here, and they can't be seen from the sea, from either the sea or from across the river Neath.
Yeah,
So I think that that's the reason for those two names.
Yes.
This is the route that I originally thought that the Saxons would take to get to Badon, which we discussed last time. And you got the Kevin Syson up here. And one of the other confirming factors for me on Kevin Syson is this is the LiDAR of Kevin Syson. And if you look very carefully, you can see straight line there. There's a trapezoidal line there where I got the arrows things.
Yeah.
And it's not a hedge line. There's hedge lines here, and there's a road here that you can see on the LiDAR. There's this faint trapezoidal outline there, which I believe was the Saxon camp.
Yeah, it's quite possible.
And then again, you know, this is it. We're then coming up from, this is the Margam Hill Fort. You're coming up to the first fort there. There's the enclosure there. You can't see my finger. You know, so you've got Margam camp there, the first fort. There's that enclosure there. That's quite a small one. So, but it's important because it actually is where the line with this line here is this road here is the track here is the British track, and yes. Then there's the Bulwarker. Now, when you look at that, if you were coming up from here, you get to this point here, and you've got to go up this little valley. I forget what the valley is. You know, the river is now. There's a small little stream in there, but once you go up from that enclosure, you're going up a steep bank. And you're up on top, and you're higher then than this one here. And this one, to me, has never been a good defensive location for as a hill fort in itself, because once you're up here, you're higher, looking down at it. It's there really, I think, because this road here and this now bridleway here is an old track, and I think what that is, that the Bulwarkers there is guarding that track. like this one here is guarding this track coming up, and then they're not on the high points. They're guarding the track rather than being hill forts per se. And again, if you look at the contours, these are the entrenchments that are there today, and that's it. I believe the Saxons were coming down this ridge line here, and as I said, what you can see by the contours that if you were down here, you're down behind the high point of the Badon Hill. So if you're up here, you can't see them because you're hidden behind the hill. And that's what the part of the trap that Arthur sprang was, that he hid his men behind the hill. The Saxons thought he didn't have as many men as he did. They decided to attack because they thought they had the benefit of numbers, and they didn't. Now, the other thing I looked at was, okay, how many men can you get in these hill forts? I came across a book where it was basically looking at, it was a guy looking at Roman forts, Roman marching camps, Roman forts, marching camps and temporary camps and things like that, and working out how big they were and how many men you could get in them. And basically, the conclusions that he was coming out, it's a book called Roman Marching Camps by Steve Kay. And what he's coming out is basically saying that when he analysed all the Roman camps and forts, it was coming out at an average of about 690 men per hectare, because you've got to allow for tentage, internal walkways, latrines, cooking, all this kind of thing. So you can't just cram 1,000 men into a space. They've got to have room to move, they've got to have room to sleep, they've got to have room to eat, and they've got to have latrines. So when you analysed all that out, it was coming out at an average of 690 men per hectare. Well, when you look at the Bullwalker, you've got this small inner area here, right, which is the main enclosure, and that's only 4 hectares. At 690 men per hectare, you're coming out at it's coming out at 966 men. You could get 1,000 men in that small enclosure there. And if you were looking at the bigger, enclosure, which is going all the way, following it all the way around. Now I took it as far as this because I thought it must go further than you would see today. If you take that, you could get a maximum of 3,600 men in there. So, if you had that kind of numbers, and you were we've already seen that you can't get much more than 20,000 men coming from landing at Crumlin Burrows. I don't know. Would 3,500 men be able to hold off an army like that? I don't know. I mean, that's something again that David might have an opinion on. But then,
didn't want to hold them out. Maybe the plan was always to bring them out.
Well, I think the Bullwalker comes into it because they're all of the written, I'd say, if you go back and look at the primary sources, all the primary written things, every single one of them comes back that there was a siege at Badon. And Geoffrey of Monmouth in particular makes it quite clear that it was the Saxons who were being besieged by Arthur, not the other way around, which is what I think is the logical thing in the scenario we got here. If this is indeed Mount Badon, is Mount Badon, because we got the dream stuff here, which is what Alan Wilson basically believes. So, and again, there's a certain logic to this. Again, you've got the plain of the Vale of Glamorgan. Arthur sees all the guys landing over at Crumlin Barrows, gets all his troops, starts mustering all together. They come up the old Roman road across the plain of across the Vale of Glamorgan, across the plain, head for Ogmore Castle, and then go up towards Badon and the Saxons up the road. Now, the issue we have with the dream is that it is a dream, so perhaps the interpretation and perhaps what's being said in the dream doesn't follow the normal logic. And if you look at it and read it all the way through, there are certainly some surprises in it. David, I know David did some work on this as well when we last discussed it with Ross. I'm looking at the tents and encampment area here. That's in the dream. It says that for a mile from the ford, either side of the road, Arthur's men were all camped out. And one of the comments in there, in Geoffrey and Monmouth, is in the dream, is that they were surprised that they would never seen so many men in such a small space. Now, what I've done then is actually measured the tent and encampment area and the troop assembly areas, and if the blue area where they're tented, where the dream says that they're all camped out, if you apply that 690 men per hectare to that, there's nearly 24 hectares of area there, and that would equate to it could hold on this Roman basis 16,000, 17,000 men. Now, in the dream as well, they cross the ford, and Arthur gets splashed, which is where someone crossing the ford splashes him, and they assemble the troops in the troop assembly area, which is coloured green there. And again, coincidentally, that is about 27 hectares. So again, you could get 19,000, 20,000 men assembled there. Now, on that basis, we could be saying that Arthur had 20,000 men. We're also saying that Saxons had about 20,000 men if they landed on Cumberland Burrows. They couldn't get many more than that in one wave of landings.
But do you think they landed,
which I find quite interesting.
Do you think they landed more after, like you said, they got to Margam, stopped and waited for troop?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that for the Saxons to do what they were planning to do, I think they would have pulled every man they had out. Yeah. Now the question is, sort of how many men could they have? Certainly there were battles where in old times where they did have 100,000 people, participating. The issue I think we've got with the Saxons is we've seen why the rivers are probably one reason why they come by boat. It's a surprise. It could be a surprise attack. The big issue with it is how many ships and boats did they have? Did they have enough men that they could? Did they have enough boats that they could get 100,000 men across the Severn? And you couldn't do it in a prolonged operation. You couldn't take like a month or 2 months to do it because by that time Arthur could get enough men to push you back into the sea. What
if you run them? Maybe there was six journeys by each boat.
Well, I'm going to say, as soon as you do it, that's why I think that the target was Margam, because I think that they were going to come across with a bigger force there. It might not have been the 80,000 to make it up to 100,000, but it could have been like 50,000, and they were trying to get them there in one or two waves, rather than the 5 or 6 or they would have to have done it from the Burrows. No. So to me, there's a certain logic there which I got it in my mind and I can't get it out there. And I might be completely wrong, but it just seems logical to me.
Could I just add a point there?
Yeah.
Bob said about the landing beach and the boats. There is an ancient method. I know the Greeks did it. If I can just get this up, say this is your beach sloping ground, and you land a boat on it.
Yep.
And that's disembarking, and you land the next boat next to it. That's disembarking, but you can also land another boat tied
behind it.
And this becomes then the jetty.
Yes.
And the soldiers just keep marching
Yeah.
across
Yeah,
the
no,
boat
no,
onto the ground.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And on that basis, then they could land more at Crumlin Murrows.
Yeah,
But
in a small area,
yeah,
with a large amount coming in.
yeah. Well, the real logic is what you said right at the beginning, David, is that if you land on Margam Sands, you're into the plain, and
Yeah.
I believe that the plain to me is what the Saxons were after. Is what the Russian, what the Romans were after. They were not after.
Yeah.
They were not
Fertile
after
ground,
hills.
fertile country and everything.
Yeah, it was a
You-
fertile country, and the fact that you're on the coast and you got the trading potentials.
Yeah. But you wouldn't be able to hold it with your enemy up on the high ground next to you, continually harassing you.
Well, yeah, but that I said is that to me is what the standard Welsh tactic is. You know, you go back up into the hills, and then you come down in a series of guerrilla actions and harassment actions, until you get to a point where you can force them back.
I think they would have been aware of that, and they're establishing a huge bridgehead. They wanted to get a high ground bridgehead to defend taking over that low ground, to protect the flanks. But that then became the battle up on that high ground.
Yeah.
And very east-west rather than north-south, as we see with the embankment. There's one more point about the embankments. British ones tend to be 3 bridges, and everybody else is 1 or 2.
Right.
Ours tend to be 3. What we've built on the west coast of Ireland, what we see around Glamorgan and across into Britain, England as well, there's a lot of British defences were always 3 rows of ditch and hill, then with the stockade on top, on the inner one, and like pikes laid out facing on the slope, the tangent of the slope, facing outwards on the outer 3rd row.
Yeah. But again, I go back to the written sources. I said there's when you start looking at the primary sources, there aren't many. But if you and the one that's got the most detail is basically Geoffrey of Monmouth. And if you go back to his description of the battle, it starts out as a siege with Arthur basically. It's the Saxons being sieged, and then when they he mentions then the Saxons occupied a hill close by that served as a camp for securing their numbers. The hill alone seemed all the camp they needed. So he's saying the Saxons were not in a hill fort; they were just out on a hillside or a ridge. And then next morning at dawn, Arthur with his army climbed up to the top of the hill. He lost many men and engaged in hand-to-hand combat. But then he describes how many thousands of Saxons were slain, and the Saxons then took flight. But the important thing in his description, which is different from what the scenarios we got going here, is that Arthur then orders the Duke of Cornwall to pursue the Saxons, whilst he hurried off in the direction of Albany. It says in the source. But the Duke of Cornwall then, accompanied by 10,000 men, is what Geoffrey says, instead of pursuing the fleeing Saxons, rushed off to their boats to prevent them being used to escape. So Geoffrey Monmouth is saying that it was a boat landing, and then at that point, once he secured the men, he left some men then to look after the boats. He then started chasing the Saxons, but Arthur wasn't involved in that chase. Arthur had already gone off. He'd left the field, and it was the Duke of Cornwall then, according to Geoffrey of Monmouth, who were then so chasing the Saxons from then on.
If they'd done that, let's look at it a bit. Maybe he's right. If the battle had started and it was coming to the end of the battle when Arthur left and the Duke of Cornwall went to the beach, which left no other place for the Saxons to go.
Yes. Yeah.
Along Eilmach.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking at this. I'm thinking there's a lot of sense in what we're talking about here, because that seems to me to fit in with these written, the very few written descriptions we got. You can actually then sort of interpret them in what we're looking at here, and you can actually see how it could be carried out. You know, so
he couldn't go east.
They would go
west.
Yeah, they would have to go up that track, Keith.
Yes.
Yeah, they would have to go up that track, and then the Duke of Cornwall then chasing them all the way around.
So what you're saying is, when I was saying Arthur, they chased Arthur up there. They just were forced up there.
Yeah, no, I think it's the other way around. I think it's the Duke of Cornwall, Arthur's men chasing the Saxons all the way up there. Yeah. And it could be where Arthur's gone off and he's gone back, presumably to either it would either be Caer Melin or Caerleon, which were his big bases. Yeah. But it could also be that he's gone back to Rhys Ison.
Yes, to prepare.
Yeah, and then they're pushing him. Then their job then is to push him all the way round, and he's there at Rhys Ison to get them at that end.
So I think what you're saying is that a lot of the Saxons were killed, but there must have been about 20,000 going up Ealamoch after. Really.
Yeah, well, it's in all of the written records again, it says that the Saxons had more men than Arthur's, and so if you do the calculations here, Arthur would have had about at most 20,000 men. So the Saxons should have had more.
Yeah. Substantially more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the battle, I must admit, you really done that well. And I couldn't argue with any of that. That was really good.
Can we go back to that one picture with the map you just had, Bob, on that one? Take a look what's just above the ford. It says remains of a cross.
Yes.
And, you know, Arthur was said to have put the true cross
on the army. Yeah. So
is that anything connected?
Well, the thing about the dream was the mainstream when they interpret it is basically the dream starts in Paris, and the mainstream view of it is the descriptions they're given are all up around by Welshpool, and I can show you that. I've got that. Yeah, here we are. Because what's mentioned in the thing is Arthur comes across the plain to the ford of the cross. Now there is a very important ford of the cross up near Welshpool at Buttington, where there was a battle. In the dream, it also said I think in the dream it also says they're going to Caer Dingol, which is this hill fort on this little hill here, and Caer Fadden is mentioned as the battle, Badon Hill, and the mainstream, one of the theories the mainstream point out is that it would be Badon Hill, would be so Arthur comes across the plain to this ford at the ford of the cross. And then they have the battle on top of this hill here. The issue with that, I think, is that the plain, as far as I can see it, is on the east side of the River Severn, rather on the west side of the River Severn. And that is Badon Hill, So the battle is when it's supposed to be taken. The siege is all about taking this hill fort on top of here. But that's just one of the mainstream ones. The other big one is that's a ford of the cross on that one. The small flat island that's mentioned is supposed to be this little sandbank here where Arthur was sat whilst he got splashed. So this is where the mainstream tend to push it, because there was a famous battle at the ford of the cross in later times. Lytherling Castle's another big one, which is not far from where I am now. And that's this guy here, in this book.
Battlefields of Britain.
Alfred Byrne and the Battlefields of England. He's a military guy who's looked at all of these old battles, including Mount Badon, and that's where he puts it, because at Hill Fort there, because you're on this, you're on the Ridgeway, a primary route, and Arthur's men then would have been coming from the west and the north, coming down here, and he has it that this is this Hill Fort here, and the battle would have been fought down on these big flat fields down below the Hill Fort, and the Ridgeway here, the main primary route west-east across the country at that point, runs directly below it. The downside to that is you would think that the Ridgeway would be defended. He's got the defence all taking place up on top here, and Arthur besieging this hill fort. But the actual main route, you would have thought that they would have had a place where they defended in front of that. If they, like on the British Trackway, where you've got the entrenchments in front of it, protecting from attack from the east. You would think if they were protecting from the north, that they would have had a defence in front of the Ridgeway rather than behind it. Because if Arthur took the Ridgeway, he's got control of the main transport and transport route then.
Yeah, and then lo and behold, back on the picture of South Wales, you had a Ford of the Cross.
That's one of the downsides of Walton Blackett's series, that there is no historic Ford of the Cross. I've got it down there. This is where Alan was saying it's got to be here.
Yeah.
Because the other descriptions say that from the either side of the road for a mile, from the ford is where they were camped out. Well, this is the only ford it can be, if that description is to remain true. So that must be the Ford of the Cross, but it's not. There's no old maps or there's no old anything history I can find saying that was ever called Ford of the Cross. And then you've got another ford. You've got that other ford up there, but then you do have a cross remains. So could that be the Ford of the Cross?
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And the dream of Rhonabwy, after the battle, he goes to Sengerith.
It goes in my copy of the Mabinogion by Charlotte Guest. He goes to Cornwall, but he goes to Cernir, which is between Cardiff and Newport, which again comes back to my theory that Arthur left, leaving the Duke of Cornwall to chase the Saxons. He left that way towards Newport and Cardiff in order to head them off. When the intention was to chase them all the way around and finish them off at that point.
He's got to be making plans, hasn't he? He wouldn't have done it for nothing. Everything was done purposefully.
So yeah, it's interesting, but one of the frustrations is that how little actual written record there is, primary sources. There's not many. I mean, the oldest source is Gildas, and in the Gildas narrative, Arthur doesn't even get mentioned. He's not mentioned by name at all. It's only until you get to Nennius, a couple of hundred years later, that Arthur's name is mentioned. Now, the mainstream again have got lots of theories why Arthur's name was never mentioned. One of them being that he was so well known in that time that you didn't need to mention him. Everyone would know what you're talking about. And the other thing with Gildas is that he was within living memory of the battle. He was supposedly born 44 years. He was writing 44 years after the battle, and he was supposed to be born, he says, 44 years earlier when the battle took place. So he's writing within living memory. People who were fought in the battle were probably still alive, quite old, but it was still fresh in the memory, if you like. So what you can draw from that is two things. One, there was definitely a Battle of Badon. It's not a myth. It's not part of the Arthur legends or anything like that. There was a Battle of Badon. Where it was, no one knows precisely now. But the second thing was, it was called always from day one. The very first mention of it in writing, it was always a siege, not just a straightforward battle. There was a siege was involved. So those are the two things that you can take from Gildas. And then when you get to Nennius, and then he's writing at the end of the 8th century, around about 790, 800. It's writing around about that period. So you're writing now about about 200 years, 200 years after the event. But again, it was obvious the way he's writing. It's a known story. It's fresh in the memory. People know all about it, and a bit more detail was added then. And then really nothing more was added until Geoffrey of Monmouth. And then Geoffrey of Monmouth was the start of where Arthur basically, the stories started to go wrong, because he introduced a lot of new elements into it, and it was more storytelling than history. It was at that junction then. For after Geoffrey of Monmouth, everything that came after it was a romantic, literary version of the battle rather than an historical account of the battle. So really, when I'm looking at it, a lot of what Geoffrey of Monmouth says, I think, could be additions to it, but they would be additions from what was being the oral history, if you like, or the history that was known or been written before, and which we've since lost. But certainly after his point there, it becomes a more romantic view, and it becomes a more literary view, and it's and this is where you get all of the stories which don't fit in with the facts. Basically, it becomes a story and a legend rather than a history.
Have you got any more slides that we haven't seen that you think we ought to?
No, I think the main thing for me was is to look at the landscape and the land form, and you can see that the rivers play an important part in Wales. And to this day, you've got the Heads of the Valley Road. Well, why is the Heads of the Valley Road there? It was always a main transport corridor because of what it is. You can go up and around. You'll be bypassing that whole central mountain range, mountain massif, or whatever you want to call it. And also you can actually see, again, looking at where the battles are fought, when it's Badon, look how close it is to the plain. You're not up into the mountains. You're on the edge of the mountains and the plain.
And that's quite an interesting picture of the close proximity between Badon and Rusaisen. So yeah. So if the Saxons were after the plain, they would have headed that way, wouldn't they?
Well, yeah. At the end of the day, to my mind, the Saxons were not coming here to get whatever settlement or fort or whatever was there, because that's not where the wealth is. They were coming after the wealth, and the wealth is the Vale of Glamorgan and the plain. Now, how they were planning to do that, this is where we can have hours of fun and amusement. So of saying, were they coming from were they trying to take it from the mountains? Were they coming across and then they're going to come down the valleys and then push the Welsh off the edge of the plain into the sea? Now you can argue that that's one way of doing it, but once you've got 100,000 men, one of the big things you have to do is feed them. And the food is going to be down on the plain. It's not going to be up in the hills.
Yeah.
The 100,000 men up in the hills are only going to last so long. And the other thing that I think that could happen is if the Saxons did ever take Cairo, Arthur, with his local knowledge of the hills and things like that, could very quickly block all their routes off. They could block all the valley routes. They could block all the ridge routes off with quite a small number of men, in reality, and prevent them from getting any supplies in or out. So I think the whole thing was, to my mind, I like the idea of a small force coming in and to get a larger force ensconced at Markham Sands, where they could come across here and take the plain.
That's where we're both in agreement on that point.
Yeah. And then, and if you look at what happened, that's exactly what the Romans did. They took the plain and pushed the Welsh up and put the natives back up into the hills. The Normans did the same, and neither the Normans or the Romans had a major presence up in the hills. They had routes going through it to get to other parts of Wales, but they didn't have huge settlements or anything like that, because there's no need for them. You would just have military settlements there guarding your routes to other parts of Wales. That apart from the plain, the only other wealth in Wales at that time was probably the gold. When you got the gold up in mid Wales.
Why would they build the big castle up in Cairo?
Well, I think the big castle is more to do with the Welsh defence. If ever they got pushed up into the hills, Cairo, big castle up in there, you're far enough from the plain. It would be very difficult for anyone who held the plain to come and get you, because they'd have to come up. It would be a difficult. They'd have to have quite a lot of men behind them to take that from you, and it's just then a good base in order then to start harrying people, because when you look at it as well, you're coming around here, and you can come down to you can come down the valleys then to Rousais, and you've got opportunities to harry the people down in the plain.
I think you may be right. It is a base camp, and you had access. It's virtually the centre of Glamorgan when you think of it.
Yeah,
they can go anywhere, and if you look at Cairo itself, they're on a plateau of a mountain which runs all the way from Port Talbot to Aberafan, all the way over to Irvine.
Yeah, that's why, joining your dots, the dots follow the route of the British track, all the way up there. You're coming across on basically ridge lines, and you're taking the good route to get up there. And I say, once they started on that route, I don't believe they had any option. They were like on a railroad.
No, they were stuck on it.
They couldn't get off it, and they were just being pushed further and further up.
Because Duke of Cornwall sunk all their boats suddenly. So it's good. It's very good.
Like I said, just put forward. I'm putting this forward just for discussion purposes to try and open it up. So somebody out there, I keep on saying what we're trying to do is build a jigsaw, and we don't have the box with the pretty picture on it to see the jigsaw we're making. And I think people like Wilson and Blackheath have given us the edge of the jigsaw.
What a wonderful presentation, Bob. Thanks very much.
Yes.
So, Keith, would you like to respond to the information Bob has imparted?
Yes, I think it's the battle plan, a good battle plan. Yes, Arthur could have come from the east. I think it's quite sensible. But the definite thing is that the Saxons were forced, or willingly, or being pushed by Duke of Cornwall up the British trackway, and they obviously went up to Irvine and then back down to Rousais, which I think Bob is right. I think Arthur was there. He met all the other kings, and they sorted them out. Thank you.
Dave, what's the military viewpoint of both presentations?
Well, But I agree with Bob and a lot of what Keith was saying as well. And, you know, we're never going to know for sure, or we're probably not going to go for sure. But it's from what we see on the ground, what we think of from the art of war, the topography, the politics of wanting to take Arthur's fortress Glamorgan by the Saxons. It looks like they were establishing a bridgehead to the west of Arthur, maybe to encircle, maybe to take it straight away by direct assault. But they were held back. They were the initial bridgehead, if they were holding their main force back, was kept busy by the defences that were already there, long enough for Arthur to build up a really big force. Whether he came from the east, I tend to get the feeling that the Saxons were engaged around Badon area with those forts that were already there, and as is recorded in Rhonabwy, the three main characters that are buried in the area, like the Archen, that they were engaging with the Saxons while the main force landed, and then their plans were scuppered to get far in and to take Fortress Glamorgan, probably from the high ground or the low grounds. We don't really know what went wrong with their plan there. But the landing area, the amount of sort of Saxon names in the ground, it's we're getting closer to it. There's all little bits coming together there. And if one person has a theory, not all of it will be right, and then another person's theory, some of that will be right, and we just keep forging ahead.
I fully agree with that. Is no one person knows the full story, and the more we talk about it, the more we, as I say, we're trying to ultimately come to some kind of consensus as the most logical course of action. You know, and to do that, you've got to look at all the different things and have a discussion and argue in a not in an antagonistic way, but in a constructive way. To actually see if we can put together a story which actually stacks up 100%.
Well, I think I've learned more today than I've learned from all the books I read of Wilson and Blackett. The two ideas you both put forward matched each other perfectly, I thought. It's just a case of either were they pushed or did they follow?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think you both made wonderful arguments. And I think the readers, the viewers, can make up their own minds now. And I think you've given them plenty of food for thought. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
What I would say, Paul, before you finish is, I want more than just make up their own mind. I want for them to tell us what they think, so that we can have another discussion. They can come up with a theory which matches the facts better than ours. I'm all for it. You know, let's have that discussion. You know, just don't sit there and make up your own mind. You know, actually, you know, come and tell us what you think.
That's brilliant. And on that note, thank you very much, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye then.
Hello. Well, today I'm back talking with Keith Price. Welcome, Keith.
Hiya, Paul.
And today we're going to fill in some of the gaps, maybe from part one of our talk about the Saxon Marathon. And so today, Keith is going to give us some more background on Pencastle.
Yes, it's. I think the impression we all got generally is that the only castles in Wales were either Normans or other ones, you know, that are much earlier. Obviously, this was not an ill fort. This was a bona fide castle. I'm going to show you the reasons why. Paul, this is Pencastle, what I envisage it would look like. I've taken different castles and adapted them on Photoshop just to give an impression of what it looked like. What we've got to realize is that this, along the defending wall here, that's 335 meters, which is over 3 rugby pitches. This you know, this was enormous. This is the dry moat, which went round, and then you have the boundary wall, or the protection wall, which went around as well. This is the keep and the palace, which gives the impression that it was not only used as a defense, but a home for someone. Just go on. This is what is left there now. And you've got to admit, it's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, massive, isn't it?
So if you look at that, what you got, there's the soil that went up there on my. So they've dug all this out. That must be 100 foot down there into the hollow of the moat. And what they've done, they just built the walls up then and through. All the soil that came out, they pumped into on top of the donut there, and I work it out about 150 feet. So the keeps were built with cellars, dungeons, whatever, and then they filled the soil up. Just go on. This is the road that I found all the stones on. You can see the tower there now, still there. So this is quite a steep path. There's the moat, the dry moat. And there is the keep. I worked that out at about 150 by 120 meters. Vast. This was not a small castle.
Anybody ever done any archaeological dig to find the footings?
No, no one. It's never. It wasn't found until recently. Although we knew it's there.
Yeah.
No one did anything. It was reported years ago that there might be an Iron Age fort, but no one's found anything. It's been investigated by Glamorgan, Gwent, the history people.
Yeah.
And they've come back saying there's nothing there. They said it was similar to other mountains in the area. So I've looked around. I can't see any donut-shaped mountain near. Anyway, this year, I just put a couple of notes here. You can see this is just a stone hanging on that path, nothing else. And there's some strange marks on it, see it?
Yep.
And then we got flat areas. See the flat areas?
Yep.
That tells me that it was, I think that's the back. What I said is, I suspect this is the back of the masonry stonework for an arched window. Right? If you look there, see it? You can see the arch. Now, if you turn that over, I expect the arch would be there.
Right.
And so with the lots of the churches and that type buildings, they would have false work. And although it's arch, there's not arch, you can't see through it. Right? But that's, you know, it's a characteristic that's quite common. It's the way they did fenestration. I'm asking any of our viewers if they see something. I mean, if they can recognize this, for example.
Yeah.
I think there's an 82 and a 7. I don't know. But
I see what you mean. Yeah, it looks like
yeah, I don't know. So anything they see, and just make a note of it and come back. You know, this main reason is to let people know what's happening, you know, and to gain experience.
What is that over in the top left? It looks like a nail.
Well, it could be, yeah, it could be. Flat surface again. What it does show, it's, oh, you can see the arch there, look. You can see the arch and then it goes up again.
Yeah.
See it?
Yeah.
Now, what it's telling me is this is not ordinary stone.
No.
This is telling me it's work stone. Now, you know, that's without doubt. What you got here, just move this out of the way, put it over there. What you got here is ribbed surface. You can
Yeah,
see
pretty straight lines, aren't they?
Yeah. Don't know what that is. I got an idea as I go on, because I'll find more. This was a strange one.
It is, isn't it?
Tell me what that is, Paul.
But it looks as if you got a badge on the wall.
I don't know what it
Maybe
is.
they painted it on or something. Painted it.
I honestly don't know. I mean, I don't know what it is. I thought it was an egg, actually.
Egg, yeah.
I thought it was an egg. You know, a dinosaur's egg or something. I mean, it's that. I've never seen anything like it. So I'll just go on again.
It does look carved, doesn't it?
It's strange. I mean, there's stones around it. If you look, a skinned stone around it.
Yeah, they're attached to it.
I'm just hoping someone will say, "Oh, that's this or that." I don't know.
Put it on a wall and you could paint shield on it, you know, like a coat of arms, couldn't you, or something?
Who knows? Oh, right. This is another one I found. And it looks like a wings of a cherub. I said it can't be an angel because it's pre-Christian. What I believe anyway.
Well, all the Old Testament is filled with angels, and that's pre-Christian.
Well, could be. But it looks like it's been worked that way.
Yeah, it's a pattern.
It's a natural thing, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know why I picked that one, but maybe someone's got an idea. Who knows?
Those wings of an angel you're talking about, has that got crevices filled with the black and the stuff that we thought was?
No, I haven't come near that yet.
All right. Looks like a wings again. It looks like something for sure.
Okay. Right, this one here this is that. That's a springing point of a cathedral type arch. Right there.
Wow.
That's what it is. It isn't anything else. So, you know, let's get out of our heads that this was a ill fort. This was not an ill fort. You don't build fenestration into an ill fort, do you?
No, you'd have to be a castle, wouldn't it? Bona fide.
It's a castle, you know, a magnificent castle. That I can say that is definitely a springing point. I have no qualms, that's a springing point. That is not natural. That is not natural.
No, no.
That's worked. That's been worked. I envisage an angel or cherub of some sort, because it's what it is. Unless someone tell us better, I'm open. Someone look at this and say, "Oh, I've just been down to church so and so, and this is what it is." Boom, you know.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this, you know. Right. Again, this is just another stone. I can't see anything really on it, but I picked the bad, well, not bad ones, but the, you know, not the ones on purpose, so they don't show up.
It's definitely a dressed stone of some kind, isn't it? It's been squared off.
Right. Now this is a cornice from the stonework where it hits the roof. You will not have this on the other fort.
No.
This is classic master masonry. Not only that, it's a corner. So what you've got is this one coming the other way. It's an internal corner. Internal corner. So that. And this black, we've talked about it before.
Yep.
I believe is the residue of the comet. Now, why it isn't on rocks and things, you know, it must have been protected for 1,000 years. Who knows?
Yeah, in the crevice, covered over.
Yeah, covered. It's only now, you know, it's been in the trees for 100 years, because that was a plantation. You know, right?
Yeah.
But I've got an app on my phone. Wonderful thing. It stops me pulling out good plants instead of the weeds. I take a photograph of a weed, which I think is a weed, and it tells me it's a potato or something, so I don't put it out. It's comical. But it's very, I thought I'd try it on this.
Yep. Great thinking.
So
lens up. Yeah.
It comes up as lunar meteorite silica morphobs, polyphobs. I don't know.
Can't get better than that, can you? Comet dust.
Oh, it just looks like residue.
Yeah. Silica.
But you know, that isn't scientific at all, is it?
No, but
at least it stops people. I've got these. I would love someone to come back and say, "Oh, I'd love to have a test on this." You know.
Yeah.
It's there if anybody wants it. But it's really good, I think. You know. Oh, this was interesting. This was interesting.
Alabaster.
There's Rob there, and what we did, we walked down the mountain, and Rob found lots of stones, as a Scotsman says, which are found or been found when the IMAX go through and pulls all the ground away, or the caterpillars, because they're not ruining the site, they just going through it, you know, which is normal. And that, I did the same with that. It's strange stone, it's all cracked, and you know, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. So I did the same. I thought I'd do a stone lens. I do this lens up. It said it was alabaster.
Well,
Alabaster.
yeah, they got some of that occurring in Penarth,
But
and they
it's
make beautiful stuff out of it.
yeah, but it's not natural here, is it?
What's it doing on a mountain where you are?
Yeah, well,
Because down in Penarth, it's in the cliffs.
yeah.
The whole cliff, you know, the seashore cliff, it's got this red alabaster in it.
Now, if it's alabaster or not, I don't know. You know, again, I'm sorry, but I don't think these will be accessible now anyway. They're all gone. All this is gone.
Is it? Already?
Yeah, I think. Well, this was a couple of months we've done this last year. This one, this is either granite or marble. Anyway, it's not found in Britain. It's usually found in Brazil, India, or Italy. What is it doing stuck on a mountain in Wales?
Yeah, it's worked. You can see that's worked.
I took a photograph of I got a bit of marble in my conservatory. I took a photograph, it's identical.
Well,
so maybe someone's conservatory up there, I don't know. But it's fantastic. These were stones as well I had. It's just very strange. Again, if anybody got an idea, let us know. Again, I get that sparkling. See the sparkling stone?
yeah. And then look at that curve there.
I just picked them up on that path. I haven't dug anything. It's very important you don't dig things up, you know, in the area. You don't be accused of damaging anything. So these are all loose stones. Oh, there's the stone there, the cornice. Right, this is fantastic. Again, that goes into the corner there. See it?
Yep, perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what it's made for, right? But can you see that?
That's your leaf, isn't it? Yeah,
that's a vine. That's a vine, right?
Yeah.
And like I say, you don't get this on hill forts. You don't. So, you know, let's seriously stop calling it hill fort, right? And then I came to this. Now, what do you think that is?
Which one? The one on the right?
This one, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. It's got two grooves in it. It's like the other one, isn't it?
Yeah.
They seem to be converging, those two lines.
Yeah. Very, very. It's obviously been worked. See, you can see that.
Because either join stone or you could put wood on there, couldn't you, somehow?
Yeah, well, that's the reason. That's the reason I assume that they would fix then it onto a wood of some sort. Now, usually it'd be they use mortar. You know, they use the mortar and things like that. You know, I thought it might have been one of these.
Yeah, it does look a little bit elephantine, yeah.
Wow, who knows? The trouble is, I wish I turned it over.
Right.
It's gone now, I expect. We won't get in anyway because it's all fenced off now.
Really?
Yeah, so. But that, it's, but I could be, you know, I may be wrong.
Well, the eye would be in the right place, wouldn't it?
It's made to measure there, isn't it?
Yeah.
These are the boulders that we were coming out of the the area around the bottom of Pencastle and way down, you know.
Well, they make ideal foundation stones, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah, the leaves, you know.
Straight edge on that.
It could have been positioned stones, circles, could be anything, couldn't it?
Yeah. That one on the right, though, has got a straight edge.
Well, it's, you know, I don't know what they for. Again, yeah, there's a straight edge there. Some look like they've been standing stones or put there purposely. They're too big. They're not normal. I've never seen stones, I guess, on the mountain, you know, walking along with stones, not unless they're standing upright or purposely put there. You know, and this was, there was about 3 piles of stuff.
Well, they're definitely making sure there's no archaeological record left behind, aren't they?
Oh, I'd be nothing. Look, I'm not blaming them, right? We're going to blame ourselves. We allow it to happen, don't we?
Yeah.
Simple as that. Don't go blaming anybody. Blame yourself. Get up and do something about it. That's what we're going to do. This is a back of something, look, but there's something there. You can see something there. I say it's some design flower or maybe a small bird. I don't know. But there's something there. And it all depends which way you look at it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Again, if the viewer can find out, be good. Or got an idea, you know. Oh, this is the back of one of the stone cornice. You can see a nail over there, see it?
Yeah.
So that was fixed into the timber. So just proves, you know, it's done, or everything's purposeful.
And that's top part section of that has been carved, hasn't it?
Yeah.
See the grooves in it.
Yeah. Again, I just think that this was part of that window structure. If I go back a bit, I just think it could be that part around there, you know?
All right, yeah.
Or whatever. That's something like that. But, you know, again, I'm just wanting people to have a look and find out. What I say is, please, if you find or see something that I may have missed, please let me know. Just post a message on BHS. Thank you for your help. Catch my 4 films on my channel, Keith Price, King Arthur.
Yeah, I'm very interested they were as well.
Well, most of this stuff's in it, but it's important that they have a look. The message that I want to portray or get out is that this was not, definitely not a fault.
Yeah.
This was something special.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time today, Keith.
Special.
And that's a very interesting series of pictures, and I'll be including them on the overall combined part 1 and 2 combined video that I'll put out as a standalone production.
I'd just like to thank you, Paul, for your help and encouragement, you know, because we can all just sit here doing nothing, but I think you'll have to stop encouraging me now. I've been on too much.
No problem, Keith. My pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it informative. Britain's Hidden History Group has so much more going on our YouTube channel. The one you're watching now, there's a live stream, 8 o'clock UK time every Sunday. We speak to people like Wilson and Blackett, reprint their old books and help produce new ones. We go researching to the tops of mountains, all the way down to the bottoms of caves. Busily recording the books so you can listen to them as well, and looking at mysteries and working out what we're not being taught in schools and preserving it, because the physical and written evidence is rapidly disappearing. You can also find out how to read ancient writing and hieroglyphs using the Welsh language. It's amazing. There's a Facebook group where this is being discussed, along with a website you can buy the books and help us. Also, as you can see, there's now a Patreon page where just a few pounds a month will make all the difference in trying to keep the project going and preserve this history for future generations, and also to find out for ourselves what is going on, what is Britain's hidden history. So until the next time, Heddiw!